Hello and welcome. Today we pose all this question. If Noah, according to the Bible's book of Genesis, was supposedly from the Fertile Crescent or Mesopotamia, Assyria or Syria, where floods were a regular occurrence in that geographical region, he may have been white or Caucasoid, olive-skinned, or even lightly tanned by the heat of the sun. He may have had a dark hue or complexion because of the heat of the sun in that location. If he and his forefathers, his ancestors, and his family and descendants to follow, and their descendants were the original indigenous native peoples of that particular geographical location, chiefly Mesopotamia, Syria, and not the latter invaders or conquerors that came in and ousted those people out eventually and plagiarized their customs, religions, traditions, etc., then they could have been the original peoples and white, olive-skinned or Caucasoids, or even have a dark complexion or hue or appearance because of the sun in that area, as we already stated. If Noah was one of 8 survivors of a global flood in accordance to the Genesis account, that they were 8 people alone, because everyone else had been wiped out by God's flood. This was Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their 3 wives, who at some point got pregnant and later had 3 sons. If Noah had 3 sons who had both sons and daughters, etc., were they white or Caucasoid, or were they black? If they were white or Caucasoid, then where did the darker or black man come from? If no one else existed over the planet after the said great deluge or flood. The origin of the Negro race is a very interesting topic. We are not segregationists. Have nothing to do with segregation. We're not prejudiced or biased against the African or Negro. We respect them because they contributed a lot throughout the last century, music-wise, movie-wise, and so forth. And everyone else has tried to emulate them, from the Greeks in Alexandria and all they did, and they despised them, hated them after a while because they couldn't be black. It's the only one thing they couldn't do. According to Shaka Amos, Kemet adherent, on Sarnita's live stream quite a while back. And he also, I believe he made a joke about Justin Timberlake getting the Black Artist of the Year award around 2014 or something like that for his music and so forth. So we're looking into the subject because we were pondering it the other day and we thought, where did the black man originate from if Noah, etc., etc., were white or Caucasoids? So we found this online, asking, since Adam and Eve were white, where did black people come from? A certain person asked. And this writer who posted this states here that they at the time had, or recently had, read a story in a Christian publication in which a 7-year-old African American boy asked a provocative question. Since Adam and Eve were white, where did black people come from? Out of the mouths of babes, as the saying goes. The author asked why the child thought they were white, and the boy's answer was, that was what he always saw in Bible storybooks. This author, being white himself, states that was something he never really dwelt upon, or pondered about, right, or thought about, or spent a great amount of time on. Good call, kid. But take heart, there is a reasonable answer and not one which should make anyone feel inferior, as the author has pondered. The answer is this: we don't know exactly the colour of their skin was, although most likely and factually they were a mid-tone. Why is that? Because of the geographical location they were situated in? More importantly, it's irrelevant. Well, in this case, it's important. It's relevant because there are people out there who, in their little cult or movement, state and determined that this is the truth, that God was black, Jesus was black, Moses was black, everybody was black, and so forth. And it all started in Africa and all these other claims. So this would end the argument if one found out who came first, who were the first people, the darker races or the Caucasoids. So again, it's relevant. If we believe the Bible is the inerrant or irrefutable, infallible word of God, we know that we all came from Adam and Eve, supposedly, according to the scriptures, right? If we believe it is the inerrant word, then we must surely believe God knew the history to come, and we can believe that He placed the varying genetics within each person for all skin tones. So it's in your DNA that you'll be this, you'll be that. Okay, you'll be either dark skinned, black, or a white Caucasoid. Eve was created from Adam and thus is genes. Yeah, so she's the genetic clone of him, copy of him. If their genes, she's the feminized version, if their genes had been AB, B, the world would be populated with dark skinned people. And equally, if they had been AB, the world would be much lighter skinned people. That tells us they were likely AB, and whose children would easily, it doesn't make sense, and whose children would have skin tone, giving the world the lovely variety we now have, and yet all related. Okay, here it is here. We all had the basic skin colour, agent, melanin, but in varying almost, can't really read it, it's like senses or something. Parents with genes that code only for dark colours, AB will have really dark skinned children. Parents with only light skin, AB, okay, this is in capitals, this is in lowercase, will have only light skinned children, and this is in accordance with this AB, etc. Eve was created from Adam and thus is genes. If their genes had been AB in the capital, in capitals, the world would be populated with dark skinned people. And equally, if they had been lowercase AB, the world would be much lighter skinned people. That tells us they were likely capital A, lowercase a, capital B, lowercase b, and whose children would easily vary. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Giving the world the lovely variety we now have, and yet all related. The Tower of Babel, which we know God saw as evil, well, it states, He said, wow, look at man. He's capable of doing anything, achieving anything. He's striving to be like us, something along those lines. Let's go down there and confuse them and then scatter them across the earth, right? The Tower of Babel, which we know God saw as evil, was the beginning of races, because perhaps they were trying to build this tower to get to the heavens to overthrow God. The Tower of Babel, which we know God saw as evil, was the beginning of racist ethnicities. God confused the language of the people, and thus they were divided up according to language. They had one language, supposedly the Sumerian or the Aramaic, as the native-born Aramaic translator Victor N. Alexander states. They all spoke this Aramaic. They were all united in this one language until they were scattered by God. They spoke many different languages. They then divided themselves up according to what they could understand, and then He scattered them throughout the world. Read Genesis 11. Well, that known region, let's say, for argument's sake, the European geographical location, right, across Europe, across the Fertile Crescent, not down to Samoa, Tonga, or Fiji or Australia or Indonesia. People immigrated there or migrated there over time. For example, the Australian Aborigines, apparently through a archaeologist's research, it didn't take them 6,000 years to get to Australia, or they weren't there for 6,000 years or something. It took them 60,000 years to get there. Yeah, that's what he verified in his findings, his research. So we have the human race divided by God according to different languages. As believers, okay, those Aborigines supposedly walked from Europe through Africa, because there's like this long wall. There was a wall of ice, and then when this ice age was over, there was this like pathway from Africa to Americas, North America, Canada, all that sort of stuff, and so forth, so forth. So they probably, okay, we'll rephrase that. Yeah, they probably walked from somewhere all the way down through Africa to Asia, through to Java, Indonesia, etc., etc., and then finally settled in Australia. So we have the human race divided by God according to different languages. As believers, we surely realize that God foresaw this event. He is omnipotent and all-knowing, omniscience, if you believe the Bible. So it is not a stretch to understand that God placed specific genes with His creation. So it was all in your DNA, your blood, etc., and your genetics. Genes which would become predominant after these people grouped together, made homes, lives, and started to marry. Intermingling, right? Interbreeding. The hidden genetics in these people became predominant, and as a result, skin tone and shades emerged as eye and hair colour, etc. God's wisdom is breathtaking, isn't it? Well, it still doesn't answer the question: where did the black people come from? If Noah and them were white, this family from except that the ark were white. Okay, we have come across other answers. People have suggested, so-called experts and laymen, but we're not having that at the moment. Who is to say what colour skin Adam and Eve had? Well, the scriptures actually do. In the Hebrew, apparently, he's red. It's translated as red or ruddy. And according to a Christian identity adherent, that proves that the Adamite, the perfect being, was a white. And they went on to say that the beast of the field in Genesis was the lower, inferior, darker person. Total baloney. And Mormons, when they came to our house, approached by a mother when she was alive, they were asked, is it true that you believe that Adam sinned and he was cursed by God and turned black? And they said yes, because they usually have like Pacific Islanders or Samoans or whatever coming with them as backups, but they're not allowed to say anything and all this sort of stuff. And of late, the last few years, they've been allowed to come to the door in pairs, two Samoans, and preach. With this American elder preaching, they had to be quiet. It seemed like that, right? Okay, so who is to say what colour skin Adam and Eve had? The Bible doesn't say. It simply doesn't matter. Well, we just covered that. We're all human from the same source, yes, with the same creator. But the author goes on to state, if you had to guess, he'd say Adam and Eve look more like Hebrews, Jews, than they did Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. But that's just a personal assumption. He'd hate for any child to have this question go unanswered. There is an answer, which is, as the author said, we don't know, and it doesn't matter what it does to settle the argument between, say, the Hebrew Israelites and Jewish Christians, etc., right? European Christians. We all have the same source, and no doubt hidden genetics that connect us all. And the author hopes that's what we'll teach all of our children, though it's not something that people probably won't. There should be no bigotry or racism coming from white men or black men, brown men and yellow men, and we are not bigots or racists. We are just pointing out this, trying to find an answer to a question we pondered. We're all human beings who came from Adam and Eve, created by God. were hybrids of Adam and Eve and their descendants, and also the Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal. According to the original ancient, very old Tar Ashrit, this is the Aramaic script, manuscripts of the Old Testament, from the long dead language, the Shana Atika Sabrea, that's the sacred scribal language of God, or Old Tongue, that Adam and Eve spoke in the garden, and also the men at the Tower of Babel supposedly spoke that one language until they were scattered and spoke many languages. Okay, and this author says he has personal objection to the term African American, etc. Okay, so I hope that was an eye opener. And we found other articles. This one here, it says, did you know white people were originally blacks? Here's why they lost their pigmentation in an ice age. For those who have observed the aggression of the Caucasian against melanated people or people of African stock but cannot figure out why, there is startling underlay. Given that archaeological digs on the African continent, Europe, Asia, the Pacific and the Americas kept exposing remains of humans with African ancestry as well as busts with Africoid features, it's beyond doubt that the African is the first global citizen. We disagree with that, because if Mesopotamia historically is known as the cradle of civilization, and that the Bible's book of Genesis, the account of creation, God's creation of the human beings, it all seems to have started biblically, scripturally, in the Middle East, the Fertile Crescent, ancient Iraq or Iraq, Iran, that area, because the scriptures are saying in the Garden of Eden, when God planted all the trees, etc., with the fruit, etc., that Adam and Eve could help themselves to, whatever, there was no rain to water those trees, etc., etc., like that, so mist come up out of the ground and all this sort of stuff, right? And then this river flowed through the Garden of Eden, and it broke into four heads: the Gihon, the Pishon, the Euphrates and the Tigris. And today, if you look on modern maps, you'll find that the Tigris and Euphrates is very Fertile Crescent orientated, right? Mesopotamia, Syria, Iraq, Iran, that area there. Okay, so it's not in Africa or Western Africa, etc., etc. So we believe that the Africans walked into Africa. They didn't walk out of Africa to start off with. There's no, they didn't originate from there. These people walked into Africa and lived there for a certain time, and the others migrated there and they intermingled. They had hybrids, descendants, etc., half-halves. Okay, half this, half that, whoever walked in there. Because we have found in scripture, and we've realised that the cradle of civilization, or Mesopotamia, Syria, really they weren't civilizations, because if they fought amongst each other, killed each other, and had over land or whatever, then they weren't being civil. Okay, so the Egyptians, ancient Kemet, who the upper and the lower regions became one. They became united, and they worked together, all this sort of stuff, right? Built pyramids, harvests, etc., etc. They were the true civilization, right? Because they worked for each other without fighting with each other. They were protecting their whole land from invading Hittites, etc., those who wanted to come in and invade and overtake, etc., etc. They had towers on their borders, like Canaan, Put, etc., those sort of regions that they'd invaded, they'd conquered, right, to warn them of any invader, because it's basically like a desert area with high hills or mountains, so it's like a passageway sort of thing, that these people come through from the sea, from wherever. So they had these towers, these fortresses, to warn them. They try to stop those people, these invaders. Someone would go warn. the Egyptians that these guys were coming, these invaders were coming, etc., etc. So, here it says, given that archaeological digs on the African continent, Europe, Asia, the Pacific and the Americas keep exposing remains of humans with African ancestry, as well as with bust or Africoid features, it's beyond doubt that the African is the first global citizen. So we proved that incorrect. Also because scripturally, it's like these Egyptians, these ancient Egyptians, were actually in Mesopotamia, Syria, that area, Fertile Crescent, because they carried with them supposedly the old mythos in regards to Nimrod, the great hunter in Genesis, etc., etc., who helped build Babylon, and then this tower was built, all this other stuff, according to the scriptures. They took that mythos of Nimrod, his wife Semiramis, and the reincarnated Nimrod, because he was killed somewhere along the way, Horus. Okay, she says, oh, when he was born, he's the reincarnation of my husband Nimrod, etc., etc. So they took that, and that became their mythos. Osiris, Seraphis, and Horus, if that's correct, right? The name, we may have the name Seraphis wrong, but we believe that's what it is, because later on came the Brotherhood of Serapis Christus, okay, which was these Greeks trying to merge the ancient Egyptian religion with theirs, etc., etc. Plagiarizing, supposedly. Okay, so we don't agree with them being the first global citizens. The earliest civilizations from Europe came from lands or countries such as Greece, Rome, Italy, then subsequently Portugal, Spain, English, Russia. It should be England, not English, Russia, and the Americas. Even with these earliest European states, unbiased scholars from these states acknowledge the advanced civilizations of melanated peoples, such as Egypt, then called Kemet, or Tamre, Ethiopia, Sudan, and later the Mali, Ghana, Songhai empires. And here's some pictures here. On the left is a reconstitution of Lusia, America's most ancient inhabitants whose remains were found. Notice at the end here it has this IA, which is N suffix. This is from Greek Latin. It's a loan word, which means that these people basically occupied that geographical location, probably originally. Yeah, so they were probably in the land called Luz. Yeah, but they, when asked, they said, "Oh, yeah, it's the land of Lusia." Right, there were Lusic people there, or Lusic people there, and they spoke a certain language, the language of these Luz or Luz. Right? The reconstitution of Lusia, America's most ancient inhabitant whose remains were found. Okay, so that's in America. The skeleton is 12,000 years old, and on the right upper near, again, that's that Greek Latin loanword, 10,000 in suffix, 10,000 years old. Both were short in stature, and they were black people. In film, producer and author Tariq Nasheed's Hidden Colour 2, The Triumph of Melanin documentary, educators and historians Umar Johnson, Dr. Booker T. Coleman, Dr. Phil Valentine, and Professor James Smalls make a case for melanin. Okay, these are obviously African Americans, right? And some of them might be Pan-Africans, into Pan-Africanism, or other African-related factions, etc. Okay, they may be affiliated with that. Melanin is a neurochemical produced from the pineal gland. It is responsible chiefly for the dark colour of Africans. It is regarded as playing a part in the intellectual propensity of the African. The early Greeks were in no doubts as to melanin playing a role in how Africans developed some of the sciences they are noted for. So apparently these Greeks, well, Alexander the Great, he invaded Egypt, wanted to sit on the throne, all this sort of stuff. He supposedly threatened the priests who said, no, your name's not in the prophecy or written down or whatever, so no. And by the sword he said, look again, and they said, oh, there it is. sorry, we skipped the page, or something like that, right? But he died before he could actually sit on the throne, apparently. This is what we heard. We don't know if he actually did. And his general Sotir took over, right? And he tried to merge the Greek religion with the Egyptian religion, culture, etc. They emulated them in a lot of ways. They wanted to share their gods in the same temple with this sort of stuff, and these Egyptians basically no, all this other stuff. And they emulated or copied, plagiarized everything, but the only thing that really cheesed them off and they hated was that they couldn't be black. They didn't have the black skin. According to Sarneta's live stream, which featured Shaka Amos, who stated this, or maybe it was with sitting on the couch with Dr. Ali Muhammad, who claims to be a prominent scholar on Islam. He's the only one that knows the truth about Islam, all this sort of stuff. What was it called? Where did Islam come from? Part 1 or part 2? It's probably from that particular video. Okay, the pineal gland shaped like a pine cone is black. Even the eggs of the female and the semen of a man are laid with melanin, such that when there is a meat, there is an explosion resulting in a fetus, which then leads to the formation of the brain and nervous system. Apparently, the Africans have more melanin than the European. They have very little. That's why they tend to burn when they're in the sun. They go red, right? And then they might go like pink, stay pink, or get a little tan. Depends. Okay. But they're always forever out there in the beaches and stuff trying to get brown. We're not going to say black because no, we don't think they're trying to be black. They're just trying to get that overall tan because they think it looks good, right? They feel it looks good, etc., etc. They have these different reasons. So we also found this book on Project Gutenberg. We actually found it somewhere else, and we thought we'd bring it to you as well. This author, James Morris AM, Evangelist of the Church of God, this book, The Black Man, Father of Civilization, proven by biblical history, he claims. Right? Preface, and he states he had many objects in presenting this book to the public. First, he goes on about how he loves his race, the Africans, etc. Regardless of the prejudice against her, the inviolable position she holds and the things she is falsely said to be guilty of. He demonstrates his love for her by launching this book, or he demonstrated his love for her by launching this book before the public as somewhat of a defense against the prejudice of ancient peoples, right? As well as modern historical writers and lecturers who have misrepresented her and took from her the good deeds and honours that are justly due to her. You know who creating civilizations and pyramids, all that sort of stuff. Secondly, he realised that his race has had defenders, and some now, men of his race and men of other races. But he simply presented this book. He simply presented this book as a humble race defender in connection with the body of race defenders. And if his theory was right in this book, and this book is accepted or was accepted as one of the little fingers of this splendid body, he would feel that he has accomplished some results and portrayed the story of the widow's mite. She gave all she had, and he contributed likewise. Thirdly, to appreciate his argument, the reader must have a Bible at his fingertips so as to examine his references and compare them with the statements which he made wholly and solely upon the authorities found in the Bible, which in turn is the real and only authority on ancient history. Again, his authority is not inspired in the slightest degree with malice or hatred or bias or prejudice or for the white race, and neither are ours. His profession as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ would not permit him to defend in the name of justice, harbouring malice and hatred or any ill feeling toward his white brethren or white Europeans, etc. He was acting with that meek and humble spirit and with a gigantic pride in his race and his kind, Africans, which he hoped would please God. And this book has a picture of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Dr. Booker T. Washington, three of the greatest men in American history. And introduction. The Bible gives the first and only true account of the origin of mankind. It is the only book containing an accurate record of the progress of man towards civilization and it is the indispensable reference of all searchers after the real facts of the birth of humanity and its progress toward the civilization of today. Beginning with his creation in the book of Genesis, it is the only authentic record of man. Authentic because it is first-hand, not a copy of something else or a scientific or literary review, but a dispassionate record of man's creation and progress, untrimmed, unshaped and unvarnished to suit prejudice. It would not be a complete record if it did not show with the rest of them that the origin of the black man, and woe for all these political thieves, it shows that he, the black man, is the father of civilization. Well, we verified that. He isn't. He wasn't. He isn't. The black man has been misrepresented by prejudiced historians and lecturers. It has been and is now quoted that Ham, the father of the black man, was cursed by his father Noah. Now, in regard to this incident, let us take the biblical record for it, and anyone not totally blind with prejudice or bias or racial or segregationist ideals would be convinced by reading in the book of Genesis, the 9th chapter. This is where it gets confusing. Once you just say chapter 9, 20th, the 20th verse, but that's the way they wrote in those days, I suppose. That Noah did not, for he could not curse him. He could not curse Ham, or that he did in the fit of intoxication pronounce a curse on Canaan, the son of Ham. Because remember, Noah planted the first vineyard, made some wine, got wasted, laid in his tent, all nutty, no clothes on, and his Ham came in and saw him and did nothing to cover him, and told his brothers, and then when he woke up and recovered, he cursed him.